Hey guys, and welcome to some kind of review for Fallout 4. So some people have been asking me what I thought about Fallout 4. Do I like it? Do I hate it? It's a Bethesda game. It's gonna be impractical and honestly useless for me to tell you about all the little features the game has and all the little mechanics. So when people ask me this question, I think a more important and useful thing for me to respond with is how I feel about Fallout 4. And I think that's what reviews generally are about. If you wanted all the facts, you could look it up yourself. If you want my opinion, well, then I can give you my opinion. So generally, I'm enjoying it. But there are some issues. Of course, there are some issues. Though, firstly, I think it's important to indicate that I do not associate Fallout 3 and 4 with Fallout 1 and 2. They really are inherently different, though I will be drawing some comparisons. Let's start with the things I like. I think the combat feels nicer, it feels more visceral, it feels more fast-paced, it feels better. It's smoother, it's not so... In Fallout 3, the VATS paused the game, now it's a slowdown. I think that's a good design decision. And speaking of VATS, I do think that it's not an either-or when it comes to using real-time combat or VATS. VATS by itself has its own benefits. There are certain perks which affect only VATS, which is kind of nice. So they kind of tried to make it so that you would use real-time combat and VATS in tandem, depending on the situation and depending on certain scenarios. Though, of course, when you use real-time combat, it does sort of detract from the role-playing element of Fallout, because it's no longer your character's skills, it's rather your own skills. But this has been around since Fallout 3, so it's no surprise here. And speaking of skills, they're gone. They're completely gone, and now it's a perk-only system. And I kind of do miss skills. I've always liked leveling up skills, but then there's always the side of me which says, well, this doesn't actually make sense. For example, back to Morrowind, where you could be a master at one-handed weapons, but absolutely useless at two-handed weapons. It doesn't really make sense. There's always a couple skills which turn out to not be all that useful, and they've been trying to streamline skills for a while, but it seems like they've just given up on trying to fix skills and just went with a pure perk system. Now, the perk system is not bad, it's just different, so I think this is really going to be a personal preference sort of thing. So basically, I do miss skills, but the perk system's okay, but by no means it's perfect either. One thing I do love is going back to the split-piece armor system. I've been missing this for a while. And it does make your customization of your character a lot better. And split-piece armor is something that's been around for ages and really should be in a game like this, especially considering all the mods that you can get and all kinds of cool stuff. And it also helps on the tactical strategy part, because when you look at an enemy, you can see which side of them is more heavily armored and you can target the weak spots, which is cool. Modding and crafting is nice. The way they've... not modding in terms of modding the game, but that's a given. But in terms of modding and crafting weapons, armor, and structures and all of that, that's really cool. Settlements are cool. It's a nice addition to the game. And it sort of acts as an output for all the items and junk in the wasteland. But that sort of creates a problem where everything feels valuable. And that means you're wandering around the wasteland and you'll be looking at tin cans saying, oh, I could use this for some metal later on. And you end up weighing yourself down. I think it's important to not do that. I think you should just go look for things when you need them, because if you don't, you're going to spend your entire time just collecting junk. If you just go around picking up every single little thing, like every screwdriver, every toy car, well, you're going to have a bad time, I think, because you'd just be completely weighed down. But the game does sort of indicate to you that everything is valuable, so it sort of sends the wrong message. Overall, the world feels a lot more alive. Well, a bit more alive anyway. The NPCs wandering around are nice. They sort of go about their daily businesses. It's a bit better than how it worked in Skyrim. And they do go around talking to each other. And the cities feel a bit more alive, and settlements feel a bit more alive. And overall, the game is a lot more colorful compared to Fallout 3. The whole thing is not so brown and green and dreary and depressing. There's actually bright, vibrant colors like bright blues, greens, and reds that pop out against the wasteland. And that does really make sense, because the world before the bombs dropped was extremely colorful. So you should see some of this color carry over. The voice acting is definitely an improvement compared to previous Bethesda games. I've not noticed multiple characters in the same location with the same voice saying the same thing. I mean, that's been a problem for a long time. But in Fallout 4, it does feel like each character and each NPC is their own little person. At least I think what they've done is they've made sure that the same voice actor is not voicing similar NPCs in the same area. So it's harder for you to link, oh, this guy has the same voice as that guy, because it's been a while before you've met that person. And the characters you meet throughout the game are quite interesting. And they do have some nice backstories. I'm not sure if any of them are iconic yet. Time will tell with that. But there are a good set of characters to play with in Fallout 4. Another thing I do like is the main evil in the world in Fallout 4, which is the Institute. I like how it's introduced early on in the game, but it's still kept mostly a secret, and you sort of slowly figure out more about it as the game goes on. And the Institute does add some very nice themes and settings later on in the game. Though for the most part, the wasteland hasn't changed all that much. Now, onto things that I don't really like about Fallout 4. First of all, of course, the limited dialogue is something that a lot of people are upset about, and this is because of Bethesda's reliance on voice acting. Whenever you have to voice act every single line of dialogue, your options are going to be limited. It's just too expensive and too impractical to record everything. And the whole sort of the wheel of dialogue, where you only have 4 options at a time, it limits what you can say and ask and do. I mean, in previous Bethesda games, you could walk into a bar and ask for rumors and see what's going on around, but that doesn't exist anymore. Every piece of dialogue, every NPC you interact with is heavily scripted, which means you don't actually have a lot of choice in the game. And in terms of dialogue and the choices you make, there's not all that much. There's a little bit here and there, but not anything significant. Which leads to something that a lot of people have been pointing out. It's that there's the inability to be evil. Not being able to be evil in a Fallout game is really weird because, well, that's half the game. I mean, you do come across certain examples. I mean, for example, there is outside that diner where you get to choose sides, but for the most part, the game sort of pushes you to be the good guy. Even the protagonist, I'm going to call it a protagonist because you're not playing a character you create. Your motivation and your attitude towards that motivation is to find that thing. I'm not going to spoil it, but you keep saying that you need to find this thing and you care about this thing. So your whole motivation and your character's sort of attitude towards everything is sort of already determined at the start of the game. Now, besides that, options in terms of controlling the game, it's pretty useless without mods and console commands. I really don't understand what is the problem with developers putting in a slider for FOV. It can't be that hard. I mean, to change the FOV, you just have to open up the console and type in FOV and a couple numbers. There are already mods out there which allow much better options. And I featured one in one of my mod spotlights. And of course, there's no colorblind modes. Even the controls are only partially rebindable, because the interface itself is kind of weird. For example, in dialogue, you have 4 options, and it sort of indicates that you're supposed to use the arrow keys, which is incredibly stupid, because on a mouse and keyboard, you got one hand on the left on WASD and one hand on the right on your mouse, so arrow keys are completely out of the question. But apparently you can use the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 to control it, but visually on the screen, it doesn't indicate which one is 1, 2, 3, or 4. So it's completely unintuitive. And even some interface parts, it doesn't even have mouse over feedback. So this is obviously designed for console controls or controller controls. Because when you mouse over certain buttons, it doesn't even highlight or play a sound or anything. There's no feedback whatsoever for mouse. I think we've come to expect this for Bethesda games, but I can still gripe about it. And another design decision which I feel that's really weird is that you get a lot of advanced stuff right off the bat. I mean, in previous Fallout games, you had to really work to get advanced weapons and armor, but you get power armor really quickly in Fallout 4. And without going too much further down, you start getting laser weapons. So you start out the game with like laser weapons and power armor and a Gatling gun, and it feels really weird. It sort of devalued these things. I mean, previously, if you want to go find these things, you'd have to march into some sort of military base, but it's actually not that hard to get all sorts of cool weapons within a couple hours of playing, and that feels really weird. And of course, as with my link in the description down below where I explain what I look for in video games, the main thing that I'm looking for in Fallout 4, or in general when it comes to the Fallout universe, is moral ambiguity. Those difficult choices that have this great sense of consequence. For example, in Fallout 1, you could either repair the water supply in Necropolis or let the whole city die. In Fallout 2, you're told to wipe out a group of people in Gecko, so you could sabotage their reactor, or you could fix it and find another way around things. In Fallout 3, you could nuke a whole town, permanently changing the landscape. New Vegas had probably one of the best factions, Caesar's Legions, who, despite their brutality, legitimately had a lot of great points to support their cause. I recently read an article about the original Fallout 3 that was scrapped. It had the perfect scenario. Before the war, you're playing some sort of character where you're in charge of deciding which points were defended from the bombs, and you realize that you can't stop all the bombs, leaving you to decide which cities get wiped out and which don't. You decide who lives or dies, and you can't save or kill everyone. And I was imagining a game starting like that, a Fallout game starting like that, and the entire game revolving around that initial choice. Cities would have to have two existence states. They could interact with each other differently depending on your initial choice, and your adventure would be completely different. Replayability would be awesome. And it's this really morally ambiguous decision where you're trying to do the best thing, or even if you're trying to do the worst thing, you end up killing and saving millions of people. Wouldn't that be awesome? Overall, I like the game. I like Fallout 4, and I'm having a ton of fun. I'm not going to complain that it's not Fallout enough, because that doesn't really mean anything. Mechanically, it's great. It plays very well. It just lacks on some of my personal favorite themes, and it suffers from the usual expected Bethesda problems, which I don't think we should give them a free pass for. You're supposed to learn from your mistakes. So in general, I think that if you liked Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, but you didn't like Fallout 3 or New Vegas, you're probably not gonna like Fallout 4, because, well, they're nothing alike really. You should probably check out the game Wasteland 2. If you didn't like Fallout 3 but you liked New Vegas, you probably also won't like Fallout 4 so much, because Fallout 4 goes more in the direction of Fallout 3 and not really New Vegas. It's much less of an RPG and more of a shooter. And if you liked Skyrim, well, you'll probably like Fallout 4, because Skyrim with guns has never been an as apt description for a game. I think one way to put it is that it's going to massively exceed some of your expectations, but severely disappoint you in some of your others. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up what I feel about Fallout 4. I don't know if you're gonna find this useful or not, but if you liked the video, thumbs it up. If you didn't like the video, thumbs it down. And that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Are you insane?
Whoa, whoa! I'm on your side.